of years. Ndibulise kumphathiswa emva bandibulise ukukhahlele ukumkani. Ndibulise uMeya waseNyandeni okwangu program director uHonorable Councillor Ngqondwane. Ndibulise uCaptain Zondi with whom we are sharing a stage today to launch our books, and also Mr. Dinwayo, who is next to me, and we also discuss Lencwadi. Unfortunately, I've never seen his face. I've only spoken to him over the telephone. And Gamboni nangoke usaza uchilo okwelitye. So I am looking forward to our discussion of the book. Ndibulise kwilungu leParliament because he has been recognized, uSpeaker uMasipala and the entire leadership kaMasipala nenkosi ezikhoyo. Obviously you don't need to get them introduced. Xa kukumkani apho zikhona inkosi. Ndibulise ke nomzi wakwaZondi okhaphe uCaptain Zondi nomzi wasekhaya ke kwaNgcayi abahamba nam, the entire and the friends ezilapha. One of the outstanding friends here nguNomawele Njongo. She has become a friend of mine, Nomawele. I'm seeing her for the first time today, but we've spoken a lot. She can talk, and I want to confirm that le ncwadi ithi abortion by the womb of democracy sendiyifundile mna, and what is only outstanding is that I haven't written a review. Otherwise I've given her my feedback on the book. We've discussed the book a lot, so it's not that I've just bought it here and I've read it. Ndibulisa everybody ke nonobuhle baseNyandeni. Le launch, I think ukhona ke umuntu at the time of vote of thanks who will give a vote of thanks, but I can't fail to acknowledge this recognition eyenziwe nguMasipala waseNyandeni. Ndiyafuna ke siqaphele lento uba this launch is also live on Facebook. So there are people who are watching this. Some of them are not necessarily speakers of our language. Abanye abaluse volume lethu. So xa sithetha ndizawuthetha ngendlela accommodate both abantu abangaluvayo lolwimi baluvayo nabaluvayo olwimi. So we will have to balance. So there are people who are part of this launch who are not here physically. And one of them is in Sweden, as in Mqaphele. So there are people across the oceans who are part of this launch. And I would like to greet them also on Facebook, and even those who are on the radio, because I was advised that the launch is going to be live with radio shows. I'm not going to take much time, okay? Thank you very much. What I'm going to do, because when you launch a book, you don't talk about a book, but abantu bangabone nesidingo sokuyithenga, because so uyifundile in front of them. So my duty is just to whet your appetite, uba nje niyirhalele incwadi, and so that you know what the book is all about. But the second thing is that incwadi, by its own nature, when you write a book, it triggers a debate around certain issues. I'll be picking up the issues ezilapha kule ncwadi. Let me start with the title of the book. The title of the book is Mpondoland, the Navigation of History. Mhlawumbi mandiqale ngele ndawo ye-navigation of history. What I have done in the book is to go through the history of Amampondo. So this is a history book. It's not a fiction. It's not a story that I dreamt about and I wrote about. So there's a lot of research work that has been done which resulted to the book. So what I have done is to try to navigate the history of Mampondo from the 16th century, or 15 up until maybe in the late 60s. The developments and nezinto ezibangela into yoba sibe sime ngale ndlela singayo siyi-society yamaMpondo. So how this society has been shaped through the centuries. So the book tries to cover that. Now, Mpondoland, there was a discussion in my mind. Many people would expect the book to be Pondoland. And I refused to have my book written Pondoland. And I've touched that in the book. Because isizwe esi ndibhale ngaso sesamaMpondo. Amampondo ke ngabantu abazalwa ngumuntu ekuthiwa ngumpondo. So akangophondo, ngumpondo. And there's a difference in our language between mpondo and pondo. Pondo is a singular, mpondo is a plural. Because impondo, lupondo xa lulunye. So, and xa umuntu emthake umntwana igama lakhe, I think it should be respected elagama, ngoba ngumpondo igama lakhe. But I know why we are called pondos. I know why kukho indawo ekuthiwa ngoPhondo Miseni. It is because the people who wrote about us are English speakers. So amangesi, people who are speaking English as their mother tongue have a difficulty in pronouncing igama eliqala ngo-M lilandelwe ngo-P okanye M lilandelwe ngo-B. Like if you remember in 1999, in fact from 1994, when Deputy President Mbeki became Deputy President, white people were struggling to pronounce Mbeki. They called him Mubeki, but they warmed up to his pronunciation. Bati Mbeki. You will remember many discussions about Mpumalanga, and the English speakers will call it Mapumalanga because they have a problem with Mpumalanga. And Mpondoland is the same thing. So their convenient option was to remove M and say it's Pondoland. And I'm saying in the book, in my view, there's nothing bad about that. Because even us, when you call English-speaking people or English people, we call them Amangesi. That's our creation of their name. But the only thing that will be bad is when they force their pronunciation limitations on us, so that nathi sizibize ngendlela esingasiyo. So we should respect that as far as they are concerned. So I decided to say Mpondoland. There was a discussion, a heated discussion. There's a wonderful lady who has created a page called Transkei History. Her name is Catherine Costello. She has also bought the book. She was one of the first people to buy the book. She's very passionate about history, and she's great. She's deep in analysis. So we had an engagement about this thing of Mpondoland and Pondoland. And one of the things that I have reflected on the book is that Amampondo, in the early literature, they were called different names at different times. If you read the oldest books, uzofika Mampondo kuthiwe they are Mambukis. And when you read the book, you come across the word Mambukis. You may not know, but they are referring to Amampondo. And they would refer to Abatembu as Tambukis, because at the time they were not able to pronounce babengekaqhelane language. And of course, Naboke, they had a way of allocating names ebantwini. And later, in the later literature, they were called Mapontes. As a result, in some old books, you'll find when they talk about Mampondo Mise, they will say Mapontenti Mouse when they talk about a Mampondo Mise. And later, they said Amaponda. So we've got so many names that have been allocated to Amampondo, up until, lastly, they called them Pondos. And I think it was in the early 19th century when they were engaging with people like Kabo Mqikelo, where they started calling it Pondoland, and it became a territory which they demarcated, but we'll get to that. So I'm explaining the title, why I'm saying Pondoland. Now there's something that is quite important in the development history yethu. There's a book that was written in 1929 by King Victor Poto Ndamase, ethi Amampondo, Ibali nentlalo. In his introduction, Victor Poto phaya uthi, when he writes the story, he is making a challenge ukuthi people even in future generations may continue his story. And because he says later in life there will be people who might be interested in writing, but yena wenza uqala nje indlela. Of course, he was not the first person to write a history about Amampondo from the people who are indigenous. The first person who wrote a book ngamaMpondo, Walter Cingo, who wrote a book Ibali lamaMpondo, Nebali lamabhaca. So Walter Cingo was the grandson or great-grandson. Walter Cingo uzalwa nguDaniel Cingo. uCingo ozalwa nguCingo ke uDaniel uzalwa nguCingo uqobo lika Cingo, who is the younger brother ka Faku. So he comes from that Faku family, Walter Cingo. So he wrote that book. So I think by writing this book, it's also a way of responding to the challenge that was put by Ukumganu Upoto. Now, and I'm saying this is a history book. And it's important, class deletion and a history book, to understand what history is. A simple definition of history is that history is what happened. There's nothing more than that. History is what happened. Now, one friend of mine says history is like statistics. Whether you like statistics or you favor the statistics, it's not the problem of statistics. So history is not what you wish should have happened. History is not what you wish should not have happened. So what you do when you write history, you don't write history as a faction. So you must not be factional when you write history. You don't write history on behalf of any side in any kind of a debate. So you collect the facts so that those people who want to advance whatever battle they have, they can read your book and verify their facts so that your book is a professional piece of work rather than a book that seeks to be a propaganda for anybody. So the book is not anybody's propaganda. The book, and many people are subject of this book. I was thinking that Ukumganu Ndlovu would not be here. It's very easy to talk about people when they are not here. But fortunately for me, when I was writing this book, he was not there. So I was not intimidated by him. So in the event, there's something that mentioned. So that's the nature of history, because when you write history, you don't write in a manner that seeks to soothe a particular person or even to attack any person. So that's not the purpose of the history. Now, the other issue that is important about this book is that this book is a way, Honorable Minister, MEC, of trying to, in Western Cape, there are ministers in KZN, so you are the minister. It's not in the future, you are the minister now. So, one of the purposes of writing this book is to document much information ethethwa ngomlomo, which is oral tradition. Because what is spoken through the word of mouth can be forgotten. People who know it will die, and therefore what I've done is to ensure that through this book I'm able to preserve much of the oral tradition. Now, but the oral tradition has got its own problems, because oral tradition, even distortions, some of them are deliberate. So what you do when you engage with oral tradition, you must be able to authenticate it and try to check the possibility of it being true. So there are instruments that you use when you are a historian to ensure you don't take everything that is told, you write it and say, no, so and so said this. You analyze it. That's why some people have interviewed other people and they might be offended because some of the things that they told me, I didn't write them in the book because they didn't convince me that what they wrote was true and there was a fact. So that's one of the tasks that I have undertaken. So the purpose of, so what I've done is to collect oral tradition. But I didn't end with oral tradition. I've also done a lot of documentary research in the archives in Cape Town, in Pretoria, and Nalapha Mthatha, and all the documents I would have access to, even on the internet, to ensure that whatever story that I'm telling, at least I'm confident that this story, I'm able to stand and defend the story. Mr. Dinwayo, one of his tasks is to attack my story if he so wishes, but I'm prepared for him. I'm challenging him to, because he has read the book. So anybody who comes and challenges the story, I am more than prepared. I'm not taking an offense, because if you see that something doesn't make sense in the book, I'm able to discuss that particular point. Now, there are people I cannot fail to mention who have contributed greatly in the story on this side of oral tradition. Firstly, there was a man in my village. His name was Ziphathe Nogusha. He is the one who placed in front of me the history and the genealogy of Amampon. And he was a natural historian because he had never been to school, but he was able to tell you the houses of Amampondo, not only those who were close to him. He would even go to Kauken and tell you many things, and every time we spent time together with him, he would tell these stories. That's the first time I heard about abantu abafana noNdlumbini, eKhwanyana, Ondevu. And I was still very young, so I grew up. We were friends, although he was very old, but we were friends. We were able to share these things. So that information became a foundation for me when I wrote the story, because I was able now to link this story with other sources that I came across. Another person who, there's also another man in my village. I hope Abantu basekhaya will remember this man. There's a man in my village, Magoba, is Tugosai. My mother happened to be a daughter of Unkosi Umengameli. Now this man, every time he walked past our home, he would salute my mother. Even if ukona noba okamboni, but every time and he would change the names ambiza ngawo. And in the process I was trying to figure out how those names connected. And this man, Ziphathe Nogusha, was able to connect these names. Ngoba wayesithi lo tata, for those who are interested, white light Grita, phaya ngasekhaya. Ubuyagqitha ekuseni uzawuthi molo ntombi enkosi. Then egqithe ke noba umama ukhona noba kakho emalanga xa ibuya noba uyambona molo ntombi kaNdamase. And then at the other time, molo ntombi kaNkwiliso, molo ntombi kaMengameli, molo ntombi kaDumezweni. So all these names were names that were around my ear. So I was able then, when I'm writing history, to have at least some foundation. And perhaps lastly, there are so many people I can mention, but on this side of oral tradition, my mother was a great historian herself. She told us a lot of stories, history about a family. But there's something that is quite important for us as Africans, which sometimes we may take for granted. Abantu abangomama, they are the keepers of the family history and the family trees. You know, the starting point where they do it, abantu abangomama, Honorable Speaker, uthi noba uyatyibilika abiza utatakhe. Athi noba kuqhubeka umntwana abiza utata omkhulu wakhe. So in the process, kukho amagama aziphumelayo, and in that way the names of those people are kept on a daily basis. So in every family abantu abadala they would be able to say that. And I don't know, because aba bakhoya basayenzi lonto, and as a result their fathers will not be known and their grandfathers will not be known. I think it's time that abantu bayibuyise lonto, because there's some information that unconsciously and unintentionally you are sharing with people. But umama, in spite of that, she was a great storyteller, and she knew the entire network of the family Amampondo, and therefore she was also a great source for this particular story. But the other issue which is quite important is that when I'm writing this book, one of the things that I was trying to do is to decolonize our history. Because the history that we have is written by white people. And there's something that is interesting about the history written by white people. It starts from the Cape all the time. And this book doesn't start from the Cape, it starts from the north. So because what the white people are writing is that they are writing about their interaction with people of South Africa. So they are writing their own story, and therefore their direction, it will start from the Cape and come to the border region and until it gets to the inland. But our own history, I have always raised this issue that when we write our own history, let's not start from the Cape, because we don't have a relationship with the Cape as Africans. And even the content the white people wrote in the books, they wrote in a manner that they thought about the audience. Because when you write a book, you must think who will be reading your book. So their audience were white people in Europe. That's why when they wrote books, they would describe people that this is the shape of their noses and all those things. I mean, if I'm writing about Amampondo, I can't describe the shapes of their noses and their head, because I'm writing for them, they know who they are. But if I'm writing about people of Mongolia in the Far East, I would have a reason to tell you how they look like and what language they speak. Now, so this book, one of the things that this book does is to present the history and the network of the smaller tribes within Amampondo, because they branched from the main tribe. And one of the things that I've covered in the book, is how the seniority of houses was changed in the course of time. You will remember that ubukhulu bamaMpondo babukusame, for example, unyana kaSukude, but usame wohlukana nobukhulu bawela kuhlamba ngokubende. And the reason for that is because of the warmth amongst the councillors, kamama kahlamba ngokubende. But there's something that is quite important about the seniority amongst Africans, particularly Amampondo, because ngawe ndithetha ngawe in this book, is that the seniority of children in a polygamous setup is determined by the seniority of their mothers. And this is quite important. You don't become senior for any other reason except that your mother, not your father, your mother is senior amongst other wives of your wife. So you inherit the status from your mother as a man in a polygamous setup. So if your mother is senior, you are senior to those who are born by a junior wife, even if in terms of age they are older than you, but because your mother is senior. So what the councillors did was to promote Hlamba Ngobubende's mother, not Hlamba Ngobubende, the person. They promoted his mother after the death of Sukude. But and then that's how he became the king. And then there are other cases that, for example, Nakwa Ukabe, wayenomunyana omkhulu wakhe yayinguqiya, luzala amachomane ngaphaya emqanduli ozala le kuthiwa yintoni le amanqanda, for example, bazalwa nguqiya, the great son of Ucabe. But uCabe, because of a conflict he had with umnina wakhe uGangata, he was driven away across uMzimvubu and also uMthatha later. Then ubukhosi unkosikazi kaQiya wabuya endleleni wathi uCabe umnika uGangata uba makamthi take over as unkosikazi yakhe. Now that wife became senior, and then uBhala owabayikumkani uzalwa yiloo nkosikazi. So the importance of the seniority of women is also demonstrated in how sometimes there are changes in the leadership. I've spoken about Faku. Faku is one of the greatest people who shaped the nation Yamampondo. There are others who played their role, but Faku is the greatest, and naye seniority Faku was not original. He was not senior. Firstly, the senior wife, kaNgqungqushe, yayingumama kaPhakane, and later there was a trick that was performed when senior umama kaFaku ngalo trick, because kuthiwa kwathatha umsila wehlosi wagxunyekwa apha kwathiwa mabawuphulule, wahletyelwa umama kaPhakane uba azawuhlise xa ewuphulule. Umama kaFaku yena unyuse, bahletyelwa separately. Waqala umama kaPhakane wayemsileni wawuphulula bema uboya bathi, and then kwathiwa makuye umama kaFaku. Umama kaFaku uqala ezantsi wenyuka nawo, as per the advice kwathiwa lo mfazi uyawubumba umzi lo, nguye ofanele uba mkhulu, lo uyawuhlakaza umzi, so akanawuba nguye umama wesizwe. That's how Faku became the king. But there's a reason for that. There was a reason for that at the time, because uFaku umama wakhe ke yayintombi yalapha eMampondomiseni. Umama wakhe wayintombi yalapha eMampondomiseni, kuthiwa wayepheka kamnandi inyama komkhulu, ephekela amaxhego. So nangisena amazinyo akwazi uyitya, kwathiwa nanku umuntu ofanele uba yikumkani, kwabekwa kakubi. So I've spoken about that and how Faku gave the land to people, because Amagrikwa, where we have Kokstad, is the land that was given to Faku. In fact, the land was given by white people to Amagrikwa, but that was the land of Faku. And also, Namabhaca asemzimkhulu, they were given that land by Faku because uMqikela attacked Amabhaca, and then when bebaleka igroup kaMditshane, and then wabanqanda uFaku wathi mabasose bahlale kuloo ndawo apha emzimkhulu. And I think there's something that needs to be checked, Honorable Minister, MEC, yokuthi, is it historically correct then for Amabhaca asemzimkhulu to be under another king when they are in the land of Faku? Because kingship goes with the land. You must own the land first, and then you have the authority of that land. It's not just the people who are in that place, but also the land must be yours, because that land they were given by Faku. So we have touched about that and how Faku welcomed the missionaries. I've touched the issue of missionaries kakhulu in the book, how they arrived, because that is the work of Faku, because there's a story that is told. Sithi uFaku waya wocela abefundisi eGrahamstown with elephant tusks. In my research, I found that that is not necessarily accurate, but there's truth about it. Because in William Shaw ehamba no Shrewsbury, they visited Faku on the 16th of May, 1829. Bafika ngelo xesha uFaku ubalekile, is staying up eMngazi, up at Port St. John's, from 1828. Bafike la kuye baleke uChaka phaya. Now xa befika phaya bezo introducer inkolo yobuKristu. At the time basebesuka kuNqanda, who was on the western side. Bafike la kuFaku eseMngazi. So uFaku welcomed them, kuthiwa wayehleli phansi komthi womngaka. Le nto ubhalwa nguWilliam Shaw, the person who visited uFaku. So it's not like something that is told by somebody somewhere. Uthi William Shaw, because William Shaw left a diary on the 16th, bafika phaya. Now uFaku xa efika bepresenta le nto uthi uFaku, no, andizokwazi uniphendula because my counselors are not here. On my own, I'm just like a child, I can't reply to you. So they were given a hut, they stayed there for 3 days. On the 18th in the morning, 18th of May, uFaku came to them, ephethe uphondo lwendlovu. Walubeka ezinyaweni zikaWilliam Shaw. Ebamkela ngaloo ndlela. So uFaku didn't go to Grahamstown or send men to Grahamstown. Wabanika yena uphondo lwendlovu kodwa banikela eMngazi. Councillor Mthobela. So Mngazi is quite important. And that is the fountain of ubuKrestu. The education and Christianity started eMngazi. And there's something that is ironical about Mngazi. Mr. Mcebisi Mthobela, I'm saying Mr. today. Because Umngazi, I think we all know, but Umngazi is associated with distance with Western civilization. Kuthiwa ngumuntu waseMngazi lo, when the person bonakala ngathi is far from the Western civilization. But the Western civilization in Pondoland started eMngazi. Because when Faku welcomed them, they were there. And so those are some of the things that you'll find in the book. And then I talk about Faku's son. After each chapter, I present genealogy yenzala yalo muntu. uFaku nonyana bakhe and his wives. And then I talk about Undamase. Undamase is one of the most important people in the history of Mampondo. It's not important because this area, Undamase, let's go. No, historically, there is no stronger general amongst the history of Mampondo than Undamase. And he even defeated Shaka's armies. Ebabekhokhelwe nguBubulandaba. Wababetha waboyisa but baphinde babuya uBubulandaba. When he came back, wangena phakathi kwenkomo, weza nomkhosi wakhe wabothusa, then babaleka ukuze bazowela bazohlala eMzimvubu. And then Undamase again, then there's something that is quite significant, Ndlovuyezu. UMqikela was not born historically eQaukeni. Uzalelwe eNyandeni, eMngazi. Because uMqikela, in terms of the records I got, was born in 1834. uFaku ufike 1828 up, wemuka 1838. So at the time uMqikela the king was born, ngelo xesha uFaku bekwelicala nosapho lwakho lonke. And at the time, of course, the Amampondo were not yet divided. So and then they went back later after the Maitland Treaty. I've spoken a lot about the Maitland Treaty. And the Maitland Treaty, one of the things that are important about it is that that was the first deal between uFaku and the Cape Colony. And remember, at the time, uFaku, Amampondo were a country. They were not a colony or a sub-colony. So uFaku was an independent king. So he had this Maitland Treaty. I've made an analysis of the Maitland Treaty because to me it's a problem that there are two leaders of different sovereignties and they have a treaty, and the treaty is named after one of them. It's called Maitland Treaty. Why not Faku-Maitland Treaty? Because both of them are in agreement. But there are things that are quite critical there that changed the life of Amampondo from the Maitland Treaty, because the agreement there was that in fact, it was an agreement of unequal partners, because uFaku at the time wanted protection. So, and he had already sent people to the Cape Colony for a protect. Now, what he is saying, by Maitland, uFaku was going to protect the people from the Cape Colony, Abefika, Apa, and those who are trading, bavunyelwe basebenzise Port St. John's as a harbor, and the Port St. John's became a critical point of interest, Yamangesi, at the time, and the people and the culprits who ran away from the Cape Colony would be allowed to come to the. Amangesi would be allowed to take them back, baba prosecute. But there was no equal deal. There was no agreement that and went to the Cape Colony. Cape Colony is our babuis. So it was a unilateral extradition treaty. It was one-sided. Then, so Undamase came back and settled on this side, and wahlala namakhonjwayo nemithwa wawabetha ama pondomise. It's important to know why uNdamase attacked amaMpondomise, because he didn't just attack them out of the blue, because amaMpondomise, according to their records, babehlala down to Komlengane, lo mhlaba be-occupyile. But what happened is that amaXolo ayewase-Qawukeni babaleka, because there was a war, babaleka, they went bayohlala phansi kukaJoyi wabaThembu. Now what happened there is that uFaku wabathumelela uba mababuye amaXolo aphinda azosettlisha emaMpondweni. On their way back, uNdamase sele kwelicala, uNdamase's younger brother uBangani wohluthi inkomo zamaXolo. Afika amxelela uFaku sent a message what those cattle must be brought back. Nyani ke abantu bakaNdamase noBangani bazibuyisa inkomo, but there was one ox eyayiphiwe umuntu weMpondomise. Now kwathiwa makayibuyise, they refused to return that ox. Then babethelwa loo nto ukuba mababuyise le nkomo. Bahlaselwa ke ukuze bazobekwa kule ndawo ine-banding villain, later bayaqweqwe, kwathi uJoyi makavele kwelaa cala, and then badrive amaMpondomise until they settled ngapha kwentaba yaseNqadu. That is why kwizibongo zikaNdamase kwindawo ethi ngulusiba gojela phansi kweNqadu kufa amadoda, because that is the command that he was issuing, that gojela phansi kweNqadu kufa amadoda. So he was commanding people that there must be an attack on amaMpondomise. So that's how amaMpondomise were attacked. And then in the book, then there's also the story about Nkweliso and how Nkweliso sold Ipot St. John's. Ipot St. John's was bought from Nkweliso, £1,000 at the time. They tried with Undamase and Nofaku, but they didn't succeed. And I talk about the sons of Nkweliso, and I talk about Umqigela. And Umqigela is one of the kings who harshly engaged the colonial government. I think in as far as that is concerned, he is unequaled. Umqigela was challenge, and one of the people who were very strong, who was a councillor kaMqigela, yayingu Mhlangaso. So nguye lo, and Mhlangaso was educated, and he was brought up by Thomas Jenkins, umfundisi, who was very close to King Faku. So he engaged them. Then they said he has violated. In fact, he didn't respect the Maitland Treaty. All those terms, he violated them. And there were so many attempts that were made by the colonial government. Befuna ukumforsa uba as honorishe, but in summary, he didn't agree. But later he agreed, but he said he can pay money not to observe those. But ultimately, they said in 1878, they declared that they don't recognize him as a king, uMqigela. So there was a lot of tension. There were even delegations, zikaMqigela, I see at Western Cape Town, they were engaged with the colonial people prior. So he was a person who was quite engaging, but and then I talk, there's a chapter about Mhlangaso, and then about uSigcawu, who was Mqigela's son. In the story, there's a story about how Sigcawu became the king, because it was not an easy thing. It was not straightforward, because at that time uMqigela besaphila, his preference was umdibaniso. Then unyana of the first wife uCetshwayo fought against that, wayeka ke lonto uMqigela, but later uCetshwayo died before Mqigela died. So when Mqigela died, there was going to be a nomination of a successor, and Mqigela's first wife, great wife rather, uMasachili, didn't have a son, wabe adopted uSigcawu. And then there was a discussion about who must succeed, and they called uNkweliso from Enyandeni uba makayo decide uba who is the correct person to succeed. uNkweliso refused to come. In fact, he didn't refuse, but he didn't come to the first meeting. Then there was another meeting where uNkweliso came, and he said, ngokwesiko, umuntu ofanele ukuba aphathe apha ngumdibaniso. Wow. But then there was a discussion, Kamhlanga, and I've just forgotten the other person who discussed that. they came with the name Bati. And Umasachile was quite a strong woman. That's also important. It's a factor that Umasachile was a strong woman. She was even engaging the colonial government in the introduction of the hard tax. So then uSigcawu then became the king. And uSigcawu ke eligama lika Sigcawu uMasachile ubrother wakhe nguSigcawu. So that's why unoSigcawu bakwaGcaleka unoSigcawu balapha. And then he became the king. But one of the things that happened to uSigcawu is being arrested. Wabanjwa uSigcawu, and there was a lot of engagement. Esebenza namagqwetha to yakhe yade decide in Europe or khululwa phaya. And then there's a discussion about the Zinduneni branch of Amampondo. That's a significant branch because it's the branch of the first wife, Kankweliso, and it's a branch which has got many descendants of Nkweliso. And the people that I'm saying, that old man was telling me about, mainly of them, they are from that house, and some of them. uBokleni became the king because his mother was the senior wife, Eintombi kaNcapayi. Otherwise, the first wife and the eldest son was Dumezweni, ezalwa yena intombi kaMnguni uMakhwetshubi. So there's a discussion about the dynamics that took place there in that family and the descendants that came. And then I've spoken about Amakhonjwayo. There's a debate about Amakhonjwayo, where the Abapanzwa Senyandeni and all that. Somebody has to read the book and find out. I'm not making any judgment, but what I'm doing is to give the facts, what happened, because there's history of what happened and why ultimately they were under Nyandeni. And then I've picked up some tribes, small tribes, not many of them, but I've said something about Amabhala, Amangcoya, Imizizi, Gapa, Embizana, Amangwane, how Amangwane became part of Amampondo. And to me, that's quite important. You know, Amangwane, to me, they are the most interesting people in terms of how they became Amampondo. Amangwane, Umatiwane kaMasumba. Now, uMatiwane crossed Lesotho, wayosettlisha eMbolompo, apha ngaseMthatha. Now, there were three sons, three brothers kaMatiwane. Kwacaba baya attacked by Abathembu naMampondo ancedisa, and the white people, the colonial government joined, and babaleka. And then uMatiwane said, let's go back home. And but the brothers decided ukuthi bona bafuna uKhondlo noMphayise. I've just forgotten the third one. Aba babini ba crosser iKhaya River bohlala in what is called Ciskei. Umphayise went to kwaBhaca. Xa efika kwaBhaca uMphayise kulapho azele unyana awakuthiwa nguMzana. And then later uMphayise crossed waza kuFaku wazocela umhlaba. uFaku wamnika umhlaba, and they agreed that uMphayise bazaba ngamangwane benza amasiko amangwane babe independent, babe nenkosi yabo but babe phansi kukaFaku. And then uMphayise wazala umgwebi lo wazophatha apha kulamangwane aphezulu. And his sister wayinkosikazi kaDumezweni ozele uNkosi uMengameli. So there's that interlink and interrelationship, but they became an independent entity. That's why that, to me, it becomes a problem when you're going to call their Inkosi Yawuthi, when you call them as a headman, you know, there's a problem with that. So I even demonstrate how the land was divided amongst the sons of the king. I talk about many people. So there's a lot of coverage about missionary work, but one important mission that was, the first mission to be established was Bantingville. And I think we discussed this some other time. But the first site of Bantingville, there is a Dangwane. And the reason why uFaku abefundisi ebabeka eDangwane, because when the missionaries came, bathi bona uThixo beza naye ngumnini into zonke. So what Faku said, okay, in Dangwane there's drought there, that place is dry, there's no rain. So masibabeke pha so that umnini into zonke wabo abazisela imvula, then we will benefit from that rain. So what they did, they complained about that. This place is dry. Why do uFaku hayi beningajongona na uba uThixo wenu umnini into zonke. Besinibeka ngabom phaya. And then he relocated, and then the mission was called Bantingville, established Boyce, Tainton. So what then he did, they stayed there up until 1864. Then 1864 they moved, that place then was called Old Banting. But in the history books, when you talk about Bantingville before 1864, you are talking about Lena Resengu. So that's where Bantingville was originally. So as new missions, then they became breakaways from here, because when Faku crossed to the Ekauken again, he demanded Thomas Jenkins makambe naye, and then he opened a mission as a Palmerton, because kwasweleka umfundisi uSaul Palmer owayenguye owayifunela site, wasweleke lapha ngasemlanjeni eMthakathi, wangcwatshwa pha emission enquba uSaul Palmer, kwathiwa yiPalmerton, named after him. And so wahlala phake uWilliam Shaw njengoba yiziswe ulanduka uThomas Jenkins. But later ufakwa wafuna urelocate towards the north. Then wafuneka establish a new mission, but this mission was the first mission to be named by Ufako, kwathiwa imfundisweni igama layo. But yayi mission, but this school was only built ngexesha likaMakhelane. And then I've spoken about other missions, how Inhlaza was started, because the first mission emampondweni yamachechi ile yasenhlaza kudiscusswe noNkwiliso, and the missionary who started there was also a doctor, so they mixed the mission and the hospital. And then later neyaseCwele, how it started was amaRoma fika kwamampondweni afikele eCwele. So the cradle of Christianity was here. And then I've spoken much about Bantingville, how it was established. But one of the greatest discoveries of Bantingville, Indoba, the first grammar book, yesiXhosa, yabhalwe Bantingville, ngumfundisi uBoyce. Zonke ezilandelayo zoSatyo noPaul, they learned from that book, which was called Euphonic Concord. And I spoke about annexation and how annexation changed the traditional leadership. And I've spoken about the Pondo Revolt, and I was fortunate to meet Utadu Anderson Kanyile, who was part of that, and I've written about him, the role he played, and I still don't understand how our history and politics can hide a man like Anderson Kanyile. I've spoken about what happened after the death of Mandlonke eQaukeni and the wrestle between Nelson and Botha, and the role that was played by the colonial government and the magistrates trying to support a campaign, Botha. There were 3 magistrates, for example, Unos, no 5 King, I think Young Westart. They even made a statement, besithi bapresenta isiko lamaMpondo balithini. Abelungu 3 white magistrates besithi bafuna ukunika guidance because ngaba balaziyo isiko lamaMpondo. So how this thing went and how people who were supporting Nelson were suppressed, benganikwa ne-passports, ne-travel documents, xa befuna Cape Town for this. And that's about it. Because of time, I can't go any further. But one of the things that I don't want to miss is the proclamation ka 1894, when this land, after annexation, because annexation ends again 1894, when the land was divided, because some people are so attached to the as if it's their own creation. It's the administration of the colonial government. There must be a magistrate for this side and a magistrate for that other side. And now people are telling as if they are different people. And Port St. John's was not allocated any locations. Port St. John's later, what Port St. John's district. Across each district as per Mbizana, Ntabankulu, and Umsikaba. Umsikaba was later divided, Lusigisigi and Flagstaff. So that proclamation is included here. I hope you will enjoy the books. Thanks very much. I'm sorry, it's difficult to take such a short time.